What is going on, basketball lovers and hoop heads? Welcome back to Checkup. I am your host, Bryce, as always, here to talk you through your favorite basketball content. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most exciting young players in the NBA right now, and that is none other than the Utah Jazz's Keyonte George. I've labeled this video, somewhat clickbaity as, the Utah Jazz have a Keyonte George problem. And we're going to get into what that problem is later. But first, I kind of just want to talk about Keyonte's overall game, what he's done this season, what's been so impressive from him. And then we're going to hit on what that problem is later on. If you've somehow been sleeping under a rock, Keyonte George is a third-year guard out of Baylor who plays for the Utah Jazz. He's currently 22 years old, and this dude has been absolutely electric this season. Now, Keyonte came into the league as like a potential scoring threat. He was a guy in college that could really light it up, and throughout his first 2 years, it was really inconsistent for him, and he was largely an inefficient basketball player. There were nights where he could go for 35, 30 points, 25, whatever, but many other nights where he would have a poor shooting night and score 10 points. So really up and down, kind of mixed product, output on the court over his first couple years, and this actually led to him getting benched last season by Will Hardy. But man, this year has he really turned things around. In his third year, he is up to almost 25 points per game. He's shooting 45% from the field and 37% from three. Those aren't incredible marks, but they are definitely a marked improvement from where we were in the past couple of years. And that 25 points per game is helping the Jazz win some basketball games. Now, it's not like the Jazz are a really close to a possible playoff team. They're currently 12-20 on the season, but if you watch the Jazz over the past couple of years, you know that this has been one of the worst teams in the NBA for quite some time, and they're almost not bottom 10 in the league this season, and that's largely because of the play of Keyonte George and Lauri Markkanen, of course. But he's kind of becoming a player where, if you want to put him on the court and you want to put the ball in his hands, he's just too good to tank. And, seemingly the Jazz, you would think they'd still be tanking. There's still a fairly young roster, and there's a lot of really interesting prospects in this upcoming draft. Oh, by the way, if their pick lands outside of the top 8, it goes to Oklahoma City. So you'd think this Jazz team would have a lot of incentive, hey, let's tank one more season, let's be bad, let's get another top pick. And here Keyonte is spoiling all of that for them. And Keyonte, again, primarily helps the Jazz by being an incredible on-ball scorer. According to Data Baller, he's in the 85th percentile of creation true shot attempts. So he creates a ton of his own shots. He shoots a nice true shooting percentage on self-created shots. So it's not like he's wildly inefficient anymore. He's just an excellent scoring guard. And it's not like he doesn't have any playmaking or facilitating chops whatsoever. Keyonte actually averages almost 7 assists a game. So I will say this is largely due to what feels like structural assists is what I would call them. Will Hardy is an excellent play caller, their head coach for the Jazz, and he oftentimes puts his players in advantageous positions to get easy buckets because his sets are really creative. They're inventive. They're very smart, and Keyonte does enough to just kind of facilitate that. I wouldn't say he always creates a ton of opportunities. Maybe that's taking away from him, but he makes a lot of simple reads out of pick and roll, which not a ton of players can do. So that's not a detraction from him or anything. But this is all just to say that he's not just he's not a guy who puts up 25 a game and 2 assists, kind of like a Cam Thomas does. He does a little bit more than that. Now you may sit there thinking to yourself, man, Keyonte George should be an all-star. He's putting up 25 a game, 7 assists with respectable shooting percentages, and the Jazz have won more games than they should have to this point. Of course, everything can't be sunshine and roses. There are some deficiencies to Keyonte's game. Unfortunately, he is, of course, still a young player, but the main 2 things that stand out to me are the turnovers and the defensive inefficiencies. Keyonte is top 10 in the league in total turnovers this season, which is not great, obviously, but there are some good players at the top of that list. He's also a pretty remarkably bad defender. It's kind of unfortunate. He does have some tools to him. He's 6'4", so he's not super small. He has a decent wingspan on him, but he kind of just gets blown by. He misses rotations, doesn't communicate well. So it's a lot of things up here that are deficiencies. It's not like he's just too small and he's getting bullied. It's just the thinking aspect of the defensive game that is really going over his head right now, and that is why he got benched last season, and he's been just too good on the offensive side of the ball this season for Will Hardy to bench him, of course. But the defense stands out, and it's pretty rough. We'll run through a couple of clips real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. We're going to run through this just real quick here. So as you can see, bottom left corner, this is a clutch game. The Jazz end up winning this game, I believe. So good on them. But we have Cade is ISO hunting in the clutch, as he so likes to do. Cade is a phenomenal clutch basketball player. And we're bringing Keyonte George was defending Tobias Harris. So they bring Keyonte into this play action. So they are targeting him on defense. The Jazz allow this switch. And so you can see Keyonte is just faced up with him here. But the real mistake that Keyonte makes is Cade crosses over here to his left hand. And you can see Cade gives a slight hezzy, but Cade is driving downhill with his left. What Keyonte does here that just allows him to get blown by is he's going to drop his left foot back, leaving his top foot being his right foot. And with Cade already moving left, if you know anything about basketball, like, you're just going to get blown by. Attacking the player's, a defensive player's top foot is what you wanted to do to beat someone down the court. So for some reason, he drops this left foot back first. You can see that. And then Cade's already got him. Cade's already around him. And then Keyonte doesn't give a ton of fight, unfortunately. And Cade gets a dunk at the rim in clutch time. Not great. All right, we got one more clutch basket here. We got 5 minutes left in the game. Close game. Cade coming in transition has Keyonte matched up with him, and it's barbecue chicken, man. So we're going to see Keyonte does a decent job this time of kind of staying in front. He rotates his hips correctly, but as you could kind of see, it's kind of hard to see with this video, but if you watch it back, he meets Cade kind of with his arms and then his chest, and then his feet aren't planted. So Cade is just going to easily throw him about 4 feet off of him and get this easy bucket in the middle. Keyonte needs to meet him with his hips, arms up, hands up, arms out, and meet him with his hips kind of. So you can stay level and you can stay sturdy, steady with a big bulky guy like Cade kind of trying to push you into the rim. But instead, Keyonte kind of reaches, throws his chest into him, and Cade's just going to bump that off like it's nothing. And that's exactly what happened. Easy bucket. One more slight inefficiency that I feel like is needing mention with Keyonte is that he doesn't get to the rim a whole lot. According to Data Baller, he gets about 2 rim shot attempts per 75 possessions, which just isn't a lot for a volume scoring guard. And that kind of, I would say, that's why he's a slightly less efficient scorer than some other players, because he doesn't get as many rim attempts as those players. But again, just slight inefficiency. He's a good jump shooter. So we've talked about his deficiencies. We've talked about what Keyonte is good at. What's the big problem here? Well, the problem here is that Keyonte is in his 3rd year in the NBA. He's going to finish out this season. We'll see where he ends up. We're not even halfway through yet, but he's going to average a lot of points per game, and he's going to be ready for a big extension in the offseason. And to me, Keyonte is just unfortunately an archetype of NBA player that does not lead to winning at the highest level. And we've seen this time and time again across the NBA. I'll go through some modern examples here in a minute. But unfortunately, with his deficiencies being that they are, again, turnovers and defense, playoff basketball punishes those skill traits or lack thereof. And unfortunately, the Jazz are going to be put into a position where Keyonte is going to demand a lot of money. The market is going to demand that he earns a lot of money, and he is just not quite the kind of basketball player that I want to build around. And that's unfortunate because he's awesome. He's electric. He's super fun. He's had some great clutch moments. But at the end of the day, where he stands now, this is just not a kind of guy that you want on your team if you are thinking about winning championships or playoff series or playoff games. The reason I say that this archetype, by the way, is devalued to me is because obviously we've seen in the playoffs, offenses get smarter. So if you have a weak link on defense, you're going to be targeted outright again and again and again and again and again. And unless you can like batten down the hatches, you are going to bleed points for your team. And then also, physicality goes up in the playoffs, so inefficiency drops. So Keyonte is already teetering on the edge of semi-inefficient, and he has been for the last 2 years. This year, of course, it's gone up, but we could expect to see that efficiency drop in the playoffs, and then we could see the turnovers increase. So this could be a guy that, 2 or 3 years down the line, we're getting to the playoffs, and he can't do it. He can't do it, and he can't be like a number 2 or 3 guy on your team. And I felt like I needed to go through some modern examples so you can kind of get in your head what I'm talking about. So let's do that real quick. The first modern example I wanted to talk about with this archetype is actually Zach LaVine. Now, with raw stats, raw numbers, whatever, it doesn't look like LaVine is having a bad year. He's averaging 20 a game. He's shooting 48% from the field and almost 40% from three. Those are actually better raw shooting percentages than Keyonte himself. But the Kings stink. They're bad. They're awful. And Zach LaVine is their primary perimeter player. And they just can't get wins. Why is that? It's because his defense is that bad, and his overall impact on the offensive side of the ball just feels muted. He's kind of a scoring guard, and that's it. I will say Keyonte's a much better playmaker than Zach LaVine, but LaVine averages less turnovers than Keyonte, but still, the Kings can't scrounge together any wins with him. And you would think a guy putting up 20 a game, shooting almost 40% from three would be so highly valued in this modern era, and yet it is just not, because teams know that he's a defensive sieve, and he's just not the kind of guy that you want to base your offense around. We've seen that with the Bulls for years, and now we're seeing it with the Kings. It's just guys like this don't lead to wins necessarily, or a lot of wins. They might lead to 30, but that's not a lot. The next modern guy I wanted to talk about was Tyler Hero, and I think this conversation applies more to Tyler Hero of last year than it does this year necessarily, which is it's very ironic for a reason. But Tyler Hero last year, he put up 24 points a game. He shot 47% from the field, 37% from three, so very similar to where Keyonte is at right now. We're talking about almost 6 assists a game. The Heat made the play-in and then eventually made the playoffs and then got routed by the Cavs. And then in the offseason, the Heat decided they needed to change their entire offensive system because one led by Tyler Hero was never going to be good enough, which is super interesting and kind of ironic. It took them one season. Tyler Hero made the All-Star game last year, again, almost 24 points a game on decent efficiency, and the Heat went, nope, we can never do this ever again because it's not going to happen. And again, Hero is not a good defensive player, unfortunately. He's an excellent offensive player for himself, but doesn't necessarily bend defenses to his will. And the Heat have basically already decided that we can't build an offense around this guy. It can't be the only thing we do. And now there's talks about how scared they are of having to pay him upcoming because his contract expires soon. So yet another example of teams being wary of these volume scoring guards. The last player I want to talk about is actually an interesting measuring stick for this conversation, and that's Shaedon Sharpe. So in this season, Shaedon Sharpe is putting up 22 points per game. He's shooting 46% from the field and only 33% from three. So Keyonte is a tad bit more efficient than Shaedon has been this season. But Shaedon's in his 4th year. He just signed a contract extension this offseason, a 4-year, $90 million deal. And, so far this year, it's not been great, The Blazers, I think, started off the season pretty strong, but have tailed off, sorry for lack of better terms, as the season has gone along. And it's because Shaedon's guard play is just not good enough. Ever since Drew Holiday went down, the defense has completely fallen off of a cliff. I mean, the point of attack defense is just so poor from Shaedon. He is a complete sieve, maybe the worst defender we've talked about here. And the offensive efficiency has been pretty inadequate so far, especially for a guy who's kind of, other than Denny, been like the primary driver of this offense. And I think this is an interesting measuring stick for Keyonte, because technically him and Shaedon are the same age. Shaedon's been in the league for a year longer than he has, and they have similar-ish numbers. I really wonder if this kind of dictates the kind of deal that Keyonte may get, somewhere around a 4 for $90. I think Keyonte gets more money as of today from the Jazz than, about $22 million a year. But that could kind of give basis for a ballpark of what we should be thinking of that the Jazz might offer him going into the offseason. Well, I think that's just going to about wrap us up here today. Again, I've had this thought in my head where, I love Keyonte George. I liked him in the draft because I thought he was just a fun basketball player. And he is. He really is. He's had some excellent moments this season, just jaw-dropping clutch time moments. And that's the kind of stuff that makes basketball fun to watch. And at the same time, there's this thing in the back of my head that tells me, he's just never going to be good enough. He's never going to be quite there because of the defensive issues and the turnovers. And who knows? Who knows, though? I could be wrong. But these are some of my concerns. I'd be really interested to see going into the offseason what the conversations around an extension for him are. Are we talking around a 4 for $100? Something similar-ish to what Shaedon got? Are the Jazz going to try to use that as a measuring stick, number for him? Or are the, presumably Keyonte's camp is going to be looking for a max extension, but I'm not touching that number if I'm the Jazz. You can't do that. But be interested to see what happens with that conversation. I meant for this to be a kind of conversation starter about scoring guards in the NBA, and this is just me kind of developing my philosophy about winning. It's something that I've really started to refine in my head, and I want to flesh out more the kinds of traits that I find desirable in players that win championships or win a lot of playoff games. And unfortunately, this kind of archetype is just one that I don't love, and I kind of devalue for that reason. You think about even the best of the best of these guys, I think Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, although Jalen Brunson's won a lot of playoff games, and even Luka to an extent is kind of becoming this, where he's just a sieve defensively, but he's an incredible offensive player at volume. But I'm not entirely sure that those guys can be alphas on championship winning teams. Championship winners, not contenders, winners. That needs to be very clear. But that's a whole nother conversation. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far in, I appreciate you. Please subscribe, share this, whatever. I forget all the YouTube stuff, but please do anything if you enjoyed this video. Show it to your friends, your family, whatever. All of my links to follow me at my different socials would be down in the description below. As I'm wrapping up this video, it is New Year's Day. It is almost 4 p.m., so I'm going to be watching my Indiana Hoosiers beat the hell out of Alabama in the college football playoffs. And this video will be going up later tonight, so hopefully we've got good news by that point. But again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Okay, bye.